Now to Campaign 2020, and the race to become the Democratic nominee is still on. Despite a strong showing from former VP Joe Biden in Tuesday's primary contest, pressure within the party is expected to mount for Senator Bernie Sanders to abandon his challenge after he lost 4 of the states voting yesterday.
Today, Sanders admitted that he has work to do if he wants to beat Biden. He asked Sanders supporters, young and old, to join him. And it is now all eyes on Florida. Our primary just 6 days away.
CBS 4's Jim DeFede is joining us right now. Before we talk about Florida, let me ask you about Bernie Sanders. He's staying in the race, but is he really staying in the race?
He is. Look, I think that the way the Biden campaign handles this going forward is going to be critical for them. If there is pressure to get Bernie out, I think that's a terrible message for the Democratic Party to try to convey. It's one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton had problems in 2016. Look, Bernie Sanders raised a lot of important issues. His supporters have real legitimate concerns. Bernie Sanders has echoed very well with younger voters, with Hispanic voters, with voters who earn less than $50,000 a year. You cannot simply ignore those voters because you're on the march to winning the nomination as Joe Biden is. You need to bring those voters in. And so what Bernie Sanders is going to do between now and the next couple of weeks, but particularly on this Sunday when he's part of the debate, is raise those issues in the hopes of bringing Biden along with him on these things to continue to be the leader of the movement that he started. And let's face it, Bernie Sanders has made real changes in the Democratic Party. He has moved the party, maybe not as far as he would have liked, but a lot of the issues he's talked about are now very common Democratic issues.
Well, are you surprised that he's not doing as well as he did in 2016?
So there's going to be a lot of analysis done as to why Bernie Sanders has not been able to grow the base that he had from 2016. And I think a part of it, as a matter of fact, I mean, if you look at it, he's doing worse now than he did in 2016. Look, I think that some of that is going to end up being, we're going to realize in hindsight that 2016, a lot of Sanders support came from those who were anti-Hillary Clinton, that they just moved to him because they couldn't, whether it was because Clinton was a woman, whether they thought that they were or had Clinton fatigue. I think that was a big part of it. But, there's a lot about, Bernie Sanders not being able to sort of address those issues that would court other voters, such as African-American voters. But the other part that I think is really important here is that Sanders, to a large point, and that Biden in particular, has to sort of find a way to bridge some of those gaps and move forward as a party.
Jim, let's talk about the impact of the coronavirus on this campaign. How do you run a presidential campaign without crowds and rallies?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out what it's like to cancel events and then not have those big rallies that so many of the Democrats sort of have gotten used to, and certainly the Trump campaign has gotten used to. Joe Biden has had an event scheduled for Tampa on Thursday. He's canceled that event, and he's now going to give a major address from Delaware talking about the coronavirus. It's an opportunity for him to sort of discuss, and sort of set a tone for what a leader, what a president should look like in these issues. But also it gives you a chance to sort of talk about health care and other related issues. So it's a good opportunity. The question is, will President Trump end up canceling some of his events? He needs those big rallies. He feeds off them. They're very cathartic for him. This could be a very interesting race going forward.
It's interesting already. Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you. And early voting locations, early voting continues through Sunday. For a full list of early voting locations, head to cbsmiami.com/campaign2020. Also on Sunday, join Jim DeFede for a special live 1-hour edition of Facing South Florida. We'll be taking an in-depth look at everything you need to know ahead of Tuesday's primary here in Florida. Watch Sunday at 11 a.m. only here on CBS 4.